What if I told you that the kindest people you know might be carrying an internal monster that no one sees? Sounds strange, right? We grow up believing that kindness is always something pure, luminous, unquestionable. But here's a truth that few have the courage to speak. There is a dark side to kindness, and it can be as destructive as it is fascinating. That friend who never says no, that colleague who keeps smiling even when exhausted, that family member who sacrifices for everyone. They're not saints. They are, in fact, repressing a part of themselves so deep and so intense that when it finally emerges, it can surprise even themselves. And you? Have you stopped to think if you're also feeding this monster disguised as virtue? The uncomfortable truth is this: chronic kindness, the kind that comes from fear and not from freedom, is slowly killing you. While everyone applauds you for being so nice, inside you're accumulating resentment, exhaustion, and a silent self-neglect that corrodes your soul. Psychologists call this compassion fatigue, pathological altruism, people-pleasing, but deep down, all these technical terms point to the same thing. You're losing yourself in the name of kindness that has become a mask. And you know what's scariest? Most kind people don't even realize they're trapped in this snare until it's too late. Until the body screams through burnout, until relationships reveal their true one-way nature. But wait, before you think this is another speech telling you to be more selfish, let me stop you. What you're about to discover in the next few minutes isn't about abandoning kindness, but about transforming it. It's about learning the difference between authentic kindness that comes from abundance and forced kindness that bleeds from emptiness. It's about understanding that setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's honesty. It's about rescuing that part of you that was buried under years of yes when you wanted to say no. Because here's the twist. When you finally free the repressed monster inside the saint, when you allow your anger, your needs, and your boundaries to exist, you don't become less kind, you become genuinely human. And that, my friend, is where true transformation begins. Have you ever noticed those people who seem born to take care of others? You know that friend who's always available, who never complains, who carries a smile even when their eyes betray deep exhaustion. Well, there's something happening behind that facade that few can see. Kindness, when it becomes chronic and automatic, might be hiding a silent resentment that grows like a shadow. These kind people live in a cycle of constant self-sacrifice, where saying yes has become reflex, not choice. And look, this isn't virtue, it's a trap. The problem is that all this kindness doesn't come from a place of abundance, Comes from fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of disappointing, fear of losing the love they barely managed to secure. When someone learns early on that their existence only has value when serving others, kindness stops being a natural expression and becomes a desperate performance. It's as if these people wore a mask so heavy they forgot their own face. And underneath that mask, a frightening self-neglect, where their own needs were buried so deep that even they can't find them anymore. Now, here's the point no one tells you. This forced kindness, driven by the compulsion to please, isn't doing anyone any good. The person who gives without limits keeps reaching a state of exhaustion that psychologists call emotional burnout. That point where you simply can't take it anymore, but you keep smiling because you don't know how to do anything different. And you know what's most cruel? While everyone applauds this wonderful person, they're dying inside, piece by piece. The kindness that should be light has become weight, and that weight keeps crushing the soul until only an automatic reflex of what was once authenticity remains. The story begins way back in childhood, when the child is still trying to understand how this world works. They notice, even without words for it, that when they please adults, when they're good, when they swallow their own tears and smile, something magical happens. They receive affection, attention, that look of approval every child needs to survive emotionally. And so, without anyone planning it, a dangerous belief gets installed. I'm only loved when I'm convenient. This association gets recorded in the nervous system like a survival manual, and the child grows up carrying this invisible programming. Over time, this kindness stops being a choice and becomes a defense strategy. It's as if the person developed a hypersensitive radar for others' needs, but completely blind to their own internal signals. Think about it. That girl who always shared her snack even when hungry, who never complained when parents fought, who became the perfect daughter. She wasn't being generous by nature. She was buying love with self-sacrifice. And the saddest part? This people-pleasing pattern repeats in adult life, in relationships, at work, in every social interaction. The person becomes a hostage of their own kindness. What was supposed to be a beautiful quality, the ability to care, transforms into a silent prison. This type of kindness doesn't come from freedom. It comes from the ancestral fear of being abandoned. It's different from that authentic kindness born from abundance. You understand? When you act from compulsion, when saying no seems like a threat to your very existence, you're not being kind, you're trying to survive. And this confusion between survival and kindness creates adults who no longer know who they are without the mask of kindness. The lingering question is, and when this strategy stops working, what happens? There comes a moment when the body and mind simply start to collect the debt. You know that feeling of being constantly tired, even after sleeping? That irritation that appears out of nowhere, that urge to disappear from the map. Well, that has a name: compassion fatigue. When you spend years, sometimes decades, donating your emotional energy without establishing healthy boundaries, it's as if your internal tank becomes permanently empty. Psychologists discovered that people trapped in this cycle of giving nonstop show extremely high levels of anxiety, depression, and even real physical problems: chronic headaches, digestive issues, weakened immune system. The body can't bear carrying the weight of the world alone. What's most frightening is that this exhaustion happens gradually, almost imperceptible in daily life. You start accepting one more favor here, one more responsibility there, always putting others' needs ahead of yours. And when you realize it, you've become that person everyone seeks out, but no one really asks, and you, how are you? It's as if you've become invisible in your own life. Resentment starts growing in the shadows. You smile on the outside, but inside there's a voice screaming, "What about me? When is it my turn?" But that voice is quickly silenced because, after all, good people don't think like that, right? Wrong. Very wrong. The inconvenient truth is that no one was made to be an inexhaustible source of kindness. Even professionals who work helping others, doctors, nurses, therapists, teachers need breaks, self-care, moments where they also receive. When you ignore your own exhaustion signals, when you keep giving even in total emptiness, you're not being noble, you're practicing self-neglect disguised as virtue. And you know the worst part? In this state of emotional burnout, even your capacity to genuinely care about others gets compromised. You become a robot fulfilling kindness protocols, but the true spark went out long ago. Let's get straight to the point. There's a giant difference between kindness born from abundance and kindness that bleeds from emptiness. The first is the kind you feel flowing naturally, without weight, without internal charges, without that feeling of being drained. It's when you help someone because you genuinely want to, because you have energy to spare, because that's aligned with who you are, not with who you need to appear to be. The second, this one comes wrapped in guilt, obligation, and fear. It's that yes you give while everything inside you screams, no. It's the kindness that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth, that makes you feel used, that feeds that silent resentment you try to hide even from yourself. Research from the University of Berkeley showed something fascinating. Altruistic behavior only increases well-being when it's voluntary and authentic. When kindness comes from guilt, from compulsion to please, or from fear of disappointing others, the effect is the opposite. It increases stress, decreases happiness, and accelerates the path to total exhaustion. Think about the difference. It's like comparing someone who donates money because they genuinely want to help versus someone who donates because everyone's watching and it would be ugly not to donate. The gesture might look the same on the outside, but the internal experience is completely different. One energizes you, the other drains you. One comes from freedom, the other from the prison of, what will they think of me? The secret is learning to distinguish these two types of kindness within yourself. When someone asks you for something, stop for a second and ask yourself, do I really want to do this, or am I afraid to say no? If the answer comes accompanied by tightness in your chest, a heavy sigh, an internal voice saying, here I go again, then you're about to practice self-neglect disguised as generosity. Real kindness expands you, makes you feel alive, genuinely connects you with the other. Forced kindness shrinks you, imprisons you, and ironically creates emotional distance even when you're physically present. The question that remains is, do you have the courage to start choosing only the first? Here's the truth that will set you free. Establishing boundaries isn't selfishness. It's radical honesty. When you say, I can't do this right now, or this doesn't work for me, you're not being cruel, you're being real. Boundaries are those invisible lines that define where you end and where the other person begins. Without them, relationships become a confusion where no one knows who's responsible for what anymore, where your emotions mix with others, where you end up carrying burdens that aren't even yours. Think of boundaries like a garden fence. It doesn't exist to prevent beauty from getting out, but to protect what grows inside. Without a fence, anyone steps on the flowers, and soon nothing remains. What's most interesting is that people who establish clear boundaries generally have deeper and truer relationships. Know why? Because when you have the courage to say no, your yes becomes powerful. The people around you start trusting that when you offer help, it's because you really want to, not because you're fulfilling a role. Imagine the difference. Would you prefer a friend who says yes to everything but keeps brewing resentment? Or one who sometimes says no, but when they say yes, you know it's from the heart? Boundaries create this authenticity. They allow you to be generous without emptying yourself, present without losing yourself, kind without betraying yourself. It's the difference between giving sustainably and burning yourself until you become ashes. Now, let's be honest. Setting boundaries hurts at first, especially if you've spent your whole life being the nice one. Some people will be uncomfortable, others will test you. Some will even accuse you of having changed. And you know what? You did change. You changed for the better. Because the truth is that relationships built on the expectation that you'll always sacrifice yourself aren't healthy relationships. They're dynamics of unconscious exploitation. When you start practicing boundaries, you discover who really respects you and who only liked the convenient version of you. And this discovery, as painful as it may be initially, is the first step to building true connections where you don't need to disappear to be loved. Society has a very romantic way of talking about kindness, as if it were always something pure and unquestionable. We grow up hearing phrases like, "Blessed are the meek," "It's better to give than receive," "Always be kind." And look, there's nothing wrong with these ideas on paper. The problem is when they're interpreted as erase yourself for others. There's even a technical term for this: pathological altruism. It's when the desire to help actually causes harm, either to the giver, who becomes completely exhausted, or to the receiver, who never learns to manage alone. Culture sold us the idea that a good person is one who never says no, never complains, never prioritizes themselves. But this isn't kindness. It's self-erasure with social applause. Think about how this appears in daily life. That mother who's proud of never having taken a day just for herself in 20 years. That employee who's an example because they never take vacation. That daughter who abandoned her own dreams to care for the family. Society applauds these stories as if they were heroism, but rarely stops to ask, and what price are these people paying inside? This cultural confusion between genuine kindness and people-pleasing creates generations of people who can't distinguish healthy generosity from destructive self-sacrifice. And the worst part, when someone finally sets boundaries, they're seen as selfish, as if they betrayed some sacred moral code. The truth is that this code was broken from the start. The most dangerous myth of all is the one that says truly good people have no needs of their own. Don't feel anger. Don't get tired of helping. This creates an impossible expectation that pushes kind people into an increasingly deep cycle of self-neglect. They start believing that having needs is weakness, that establishing boundaries is character failure, that feeling resentment is proof they're not as good as they thought. But here's the plot twist. True kindness doesn't require you to disappear. Real compassion includes compassion for yourself. And as long as culture doesn't learn the difference between healthy generosity and martyrdom disguised as virtue, it will keep producing exhausted people who smile on the outside while imploding inside. So how do we get out of this trap? How do we transform this imprisoning kindness into liberating kindness? The answer begins in a place that might seem strange to those who've spent their lives caring for others. It begins with you. That's right, true kindness needs to start at home, in the territory of your own heart. When you wake up in the morning, before thinking about what everyone needs, ask yourself, what do I need today? Can be something simple, 15 minutes of silence, a walk, saying no to that commitment that's draining your energy. This isn't selfishness, it's basic maintenance of your humanity. It's like that airplane instruction. Put your oxygen mask on first, because if you pass out, you won't be able to help anyone. Another fundamental step is learning to recognize and honor your difficult emotions. That anger you feel when someone abuses your kindness, it's not an enemy. It's a message saying your boundaries were violated. That resentment you try so hard to hide, the signaling that you've been betraying yourself for too long. Instead of pushing these feelings under the rug, how about sitting with them? Grab a notebook and write, I feel used when, I don't want any more. Books like Boundaries by Henry Cloud or The Power of No by James Altucher can give you practical tools for this process. The goal isn't to become a hard person, but rather a whole person. Someone who can be kind without losing themselves along the way. And finally, the daily practice of conscious boundaries. When someone asks you for something, breathe deeply before responding. Give yourself permission to say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you, instead of that automatic yes. Start small. Decline an invitation you really don't want to accept. Delegate a task that isn't your responsibility. Express a preference instead of always adapting to others. It will feel uncomfortable at first. Your body might even panic because you're breaking years of conditioning. But each small act of self-care, each boundary established with gentleness but firmness, each time you choose your own abundance instead of your emptiness, you're rebuilding your kindness on solid foundation. And that's when your generosity stops being performance and becomes real power. So, after everything we've talked about here, the most important question of all remains. And now, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Because look, you can close this video, go back to your routine, and continue being that person who says yes to everything while dying inside. Or you can make a different decision, the decision to start today practicing kindness that includes you. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when things get better. Today. Now, what will be your first rescue action? Will it be saying no to that request weighing on your chest? Will it be taking 15 minutes just for yourself to breathe? Will it be finally expressing that need you've been swallowing for so long? Think about it. If you continue on autopilot with performative kindness, where will you be in a year? In 5? More exhausted, more invisible, more resentful? Or would you rather be that person who had the courage to look at the monster inside the saint and say, I see you, I accept you, and now we're going to do things differently. Because the naked truth is this: no one will set boundaries for you. No one will rescue you from yourself. That responsibility is yours, and yours alone. But here's the good news: each small step you take toward authentic kindness, each boundary established, each time you choose your own presence instead of your invisibility, you're rebuilding your life on a real foundation. And that changes everything. Now tell me, which of the 8 truths we explored here touched you most deeply? Was it the invisibility trap? The difference between authentic and forced kindness? The fear of establishing boundaries? Leave it here in the comments. I want to know which part of this content resonated with your story, because your experience might be exactly what another person needs to read today. And if you made it this far, if this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because this is just the beginning. We're going to continue unraveling these invisible patterns that control our lives, bringing knowledge that few have access to, transforming complex concepts into practical tools you can use right now. Because you deserve to live a life where your kindness is power, not prison. See you in the next video, and remember, the monster inside the saint isn't your enemy. It's your guide back home.